So I'll start today with something that sounds personal, but actually isn't. As you all know by now, my visa for the CIICA event in Brussels was rejected, and it was a very efficient lesson in something bigger. Access to international spaces isn't only shaped by ideas or expertise, but by systems that quietly decide which voices are mobile and which ones are not. So I had documentation, a plan, a folder, I had subfolders, I had PDFs explaining other PDFs, and still it was a no. So frustrating for some time and interesting for much longer because it was a reminder of how easily certain voices get filtered out of global conversation. When travel becomes a test of privilege, representation stops being about expertise and starts being about logistics. And that matters because the people who get to be in the room shape the agenda. What gets discussed, what gets funded, studied, built, what gets labeled urgent, what gets labeled optional. If voices from lower resource countries can't show up, the conversation slowly changes. Now, this connects to young adults, the group that often disappears quietly. Next slide, please. So, in cochlear implant care, we talk a lot about children, implantation, early intervention, speech, and that focus makes complete sense. But many systems have a strange blind spot. Once someone becomes a young adult, they don't disappear medically, but they can become socially and professionally invisible. They stop being the cute success story and start being complex humans with jobs, relationships, identity, independence. In other words, real people. And when young adults are missing from our conferences, advisory boards, research questions, and services, we build systems that are very good at starting lives and not very good at supporting them. And young adulthood is when barriers pile up. People move cities for university or work. They stop going to appointments with parents, and they have to advocate for themselves everywhere. And then they start deciding whether they stay connected to services or quietly drift away because everything feels like too much effort. So representation isn't just a nice extra. If a young adult CI user says, I don't see anyone like me in professional spaces, so I assume my experience doesn't matter. That's not shyness. That's a representation problem. And the same barriers that affect travel and visibility make this worse. Because the young adults who could speak most directly about these transitions are often the least able to travel, the least funded, and the least protected. And that's how an entire life stage becomes underrepresented. Next slide, please. Now, let's talk about the unromantic part underneath all of this money, funding, budget. This is the part of the conversation where everyone suddenly discovers the floor is fascinating. So, cochlear implant care is not a one-time cost, it's a lifelong service. Devices age, parts break, processors need upgrades, people move, life happens, and the system has to keep up. In many places, the story is we found the surgery, we found the initial device, and then we act surprised when people still need support afterward. If you can afford upgrades, that's great, you stay connected. If you can't, you adapt, you delay, ration care, miss appointments, avoid noisy environments, and choose jobs that feel manageable. You shrink your world. You don't lack ambition. The system prices you out of full participation. So, when we talk about representation, we also have to mention who gets funded to participate. Because the same pattern shows up at events like this. If we want diverse representation, we have to fund it on purpose. Goodwill is wonderful, but it doesn't pay for flights, devices, or time away from work. Next one, please. Now, the next piece is politics. If we want better services, especially for young adults, we need to reach people who decide budget, and sometimes that means politicians. Getting to politicians can sound like you need a secret handshake and a very expensive seat, but it starts much more simply. Politicians don't wake up thinking, how can I improve care for CI users? So we have to meet them where they are. We need to show that continuity of support isn't only a disability issue. It's an education issue, an employment issue, a public health issue, and frankly, an economic issue. Because when young adults lose access, the costs don't disappear, they just move. They show up as unemployment, mental health burden, repeated medical visits due to communication barriers, or people dropping out of education. These are not parts of a pity story. Together, these make a design brief, and young adult representation makes the case very real. Next and the last one, please. So my point today is still simple. If we want better outcomes, we need better presence and better funding behind that presence. And we can do practical things. We can build participation into events by default. We can create paid or supported roles for young adult advisors. We can include young adults in research, work with advocacy groups as partners, not occasional guests, and talk to policymakers. Because when representation is really is consistent, the systems get smarter. And when funding matches real life, fewer people fall through the cracks. And when we get better at speaking to decision makers in the language they act on, change becomes a lot less mysterious. And that's what my visa rejection taught me in a slightly annoying but a very clear way. Voices don't disappear because they don't exist. They disappear because access is uneven. And uneven systems are, thankfully, things we can redesign. Thank you.